A very good evening. Much thanks for joining us right here on Lookup TV. The hashtag is Lookup News. A very busy day for the different arms of government as President William Ruto presided over the first opening of the 13th Parliament, the joint sitting. We have that and so much more, but before we get into the business of the day, here are the highlights.
The news headlines in association with
On Lookup News tonight, President William Ruto promises to improve Kenya's dire economy as he officially opens the 13th Joint Assembly.
We must act urgently to keep global heating levels below 1.5 degrees centigrade, help those in need.
The government gives measures to mitigate the glaring hunger crisis facing at least 23 counties. And in our weekly segment of Bonaman, we bring you the story of Bernard Nyaga, a man who, after struggling with financial planning, managed to make a headway. We tell you how.
Yippee! Kamata floating at 349K. Oh yes, for only 349,000 Kenyan shillings, you become a plot owner at the Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki. The Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki is located along the Nanyuki-Rumuruti Road, only 11 minutes from the Cedar Mall and right opposite Mount Kenya Wildlife Estate. This is the best place to establish the getaway home that you have always dreamt about. For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards any of Optiven's plot of land, you get 10K cash back instantly. Jaza basi twende Nanyuki. Bigger is indeed better.
Once more, welcome to the broadcast. I am Nancy Nelima, and our sign language interpreter tonight is Felista Adundo. Do stay with us as we bring you up to speed with stories that are making headlines, and subsequently a conversation right here in studio about the events of the week and the Ruto leadership. President William Ruto has laid bare the ailing state of the country's financial status. The head of state says the ballooning national debt remains the biggest threat to the economy. And as our reporter Henry turned in our files, President Ruto has recommended a raft of measures he believes will be critical in restoring the economy back on track, including overhauling the tax collection system.
Speakers of the National Assembly and Senate.
In his maiden speech as the head of state in a bicameral parliament, President William Ruto did not mince his words while discussing the economic status of the country. The head of state noting the country was facing a worrying financial scenario occasioned by a ballooning national debt.
I have news, and it is not very good news. Our financial situation is not very good. For Kenya to grow to an upper income country, we need to invest at least 25% of our GDP. Our current national savings is below 10% of our GDP, which translates to an investment savings deficit of 15% of our GDP. Over the last decade, we have sought to close this gap with public borrowing.
The president, in a concerned tone, decrying over-reliance on borrowing to finance the country's recurrent expenditure.
We're all aware that our total collection is 2.1 trillion, which is only enough to pay debt and to pay salaries. Everything else, we have to borrow. The government members should never borrow to finance recurrent expenditure.
To address the immediate economic turmoil the country is facing, President Ruto has mandated the Treasury to look for funds to reduce financing of this fiscal year with borrowed funds.
Over the next 3 years, we must reverse this and go back to the situation where government contributes to the national saving efforts by keeping recurrent expenditure below revenue. To this end, I have instructed Treasury to work with ministries to find at least 300 billion shillings in this year's budget so that we can remove it, because the market cannot sustain the kind of borrowing we are doing as government.
In the long term, the head of state has proposed a shift in the way the country conducts its business.
On the revenue side, I am committed and determined to ensure that our tax system is responsive to the needs of the economy. It must be equitable, efficient, and customer-friendly. The economic principle of equitable taxation requires that the tax burden reflects ability to pay. This is best achieved by a hierarchy that taxes wealth, then consumption, then incomes, and lastly trade, in that order of preference, so that those who are wealthy and have the capacity to pay should pay more, and those at the bottom of the pyramid should pay what is proportional.
The Commander-in-Chief planning to realign the Kenya Revenue Authority tax collection system to make it more responsive and friendly to the Kenyan taxpayer.
We are overtaxing trade and undertaxing wealth. We will be proposing tax measures that begin to move us in the right direction. We will also work with the Kenya Revenue Authority on a culture change to make it a people-friendly, customer-centric organization. I am of the view that we should rename it the Kenya Revenue Service in line with the proposed transformation.
Additionally, there will be an overhaul of the NSSF system to guarantee Kenyans a decent retirement benefits kitty. Whether or not these measures will address the country's bad-performing economy is a wait-and-see situation. Henry Tende, Look Up TV.
And still on the 13th Parliament, President William Ruto on Thursday gave his first speech as president, speaking to both parliaments and the Senate. The president clearly indicated that he is ready to restore the independence of both houses, as well as ensure that he has fulfilled what he promised to Kenyans. Our reporter Kariuki Ndwati reports on what transpired in the legislative houses.
Kenyans were waiting for the first speech of President William Ruto in a bicameral house that bated breath, many waiting to know the direction the country will take. The president promised to lead the country without discrimination, calling on unity among the people.
The fact that the election was so close is an indication that what unites us is always much more greater than what divides us.
The debt crisis, being a subject of the debate in the president, reminded the two houses that his government is aware and will develop an alternative way of dealing with the issue. President Ruto stressed that he will reintroduce NHIF insurance to ensure that this bill benefits every citizen. Ruto says that many invest in the sector but do not get the benefit from the same. The independence of the court and backlog of cases has also become part of the head of state speech.
For avoidance of doubt, the judiciary is an arm of government just like Parliament, and my administration will be intentional in respecting the constitutionally mandated systems of checks and balances.
Just a day after President Ruto lowered the interest rate of Fuliza loan by 50%, he says more funds will be allocated in the Hustlers Funds to boost small-scale businesses. According to President, the senators will also receive a little money like their National Assembly counterparts who currently have embattled the NGCDF. It has been President William Ruto's first speech, one that officially opened the 13th Parliament and the 4th Senate for the business officially.
The sitting Deputy President became the candidate of the opposition. And the leader of the opposition became the candidate of government. And as things would be, the opposition candidate won the election and became president. And the president became the leader of the opposition party.
Kariuki Nduati, Look Up TV.
And President William Ruto has, for the first time, inspected the Guard of Honor since he was sworn in as the Commander-in-Chief 2 weeks ago. In an event popped with color, Ruto opened the 13th Parliament event in style as he allowed the religious leaders to pray for the event. And Shadrach Karia now brings us the color of Ruto's symbolic day.
Since President William Ruto was sworn in as the Kenyans' 5th Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Thursday was full of big activities as the Defense Forces officers sharpened their skills awaiting for their Commander-in-Chief. After his arrival at the entrance of the National Assembly, the head of state got a special opportunity to inspect his first Guard of Honor since he became the president. Ruto was flocked by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, under very high security dismissed the parade as the role of the president. Religious leaders were also honored in today's event, where they were allowed in the chambers of the House and even given a chance to pray for the leaders.
Cost of living is no better. Corruption by dishonest and greedy public servants remains the worst and the most difficult challenges our nation ever faced. My special prayers is for blessed rainfall, the leaders to honestly address and discharge their duties, to take their mandate head on the corruption and resuscitate.
Shadrach Karia, Look Up TV.
Parliament story takes us to a very fast break here on Look Up News. Do stand by here because we'll be coming back with our daily segment, our weekly segment of Bonaman, as well as a conversation right here in studio. Don't go too far.
Get a chance to wake up as a tourist as you view Mount Kenya every day by buying a plot of land at Wema Gardens, Naru Moru. At only 400 meters off tarmac, this is the right place to build your dream home, cottages or holiday homes. You can also buy this property to give to your children as a special inheritance. Water and electricity are in the vicinity, while neighbors are already building their homes. These plots are specially ready for you with title deeds scheduled to be out in 6 months. Buy a 50 by 100 plot of land at Wema Gardens for only 399,000 Kenya shillings. You can also pay for your plot through our friendly one-year installments plan.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Look Up TV. The hashtag is Look Up News. Nancy Nelima here and Felista Adundo on the sign language interpretation. Moving on, men often withhold emotions when making financial decisions, something which makes them logically and at the same time lands them in financial crisis. In this week's episode of Born a Man, our very own Cecilia Lubanga tells us the story of Bernard Nyaga, a 28-year-old who shares his experience as a man living in the city, the struggles he goes through, and his means of survival that include the impact of debt crisis on the well-being of men.
Joseph Mwiti says he needs to pay up some 472,000 shillings he owes a bank.
The average Kenyan man has 4.3 loans per person.
Now to the plight of 3 young men whose hopes of helping to boost the country's hospital bed capacity to cope with the pandemic were raised dramatically and then dashed, leaving them with a huge debt.
Police believe the man took his own life moments after he posted a question on his Facebook page on the quickest way to commit suicide after he lost the bet.
If you do not use debt to create cash flow, it becomes a liability. And if it becomes a liability, you dig a deeper hole for yourself every single time you take on debt.
Depression and suicide among men has been reported in the recent past to be taking an upward trajectory, with the majority of men tracing themselves in debt crisis due to the high cost of living. Now, with the existence of numerous platforms that service debt at everyone's disposal, a majority of men are now chained to debt crisis, having been tasked with the responsibility of upholding a certain image by the society. This is Born a Man.
I'm one of the world's biggest introverts. However, I think because of society, at some points I have to be extroverted. So I'd say I'm at the middle point, so I'm an ambivert. So when time calls it, I have to be extroverted, especially in line to my job. But when I'm in my individual space or with family and friends, I'd be considered one of the world's biggest introverts.
An encounter with Bernard.
Hey.
At his workstation, the FX Pesa giant in the outskirts of Westlands, Nairobi. At a glance, it is business as usual, but the issue of men in debt crisis in the country is not an issue that society can turn a blind eye to. Bernard, at 28 years old, says it has not been an easy journey since he set foot in Nairobi.
Number one, you're quite excited to know what's happening within the city. You're meeting different kind of friends within the city. You're having exposure to things that I had never seen in my life. All you have is brains. You have no capital, you have nothing, and you needed to make a living for yourself. Again, I was living by myself, so it was important that I'm able to fend for myself. So I started supplying chicken within the estate where I used to live. So I used to supply in different butcheries, and at night I would get someone to grill and sell the meat on the street.
The compassion and gusto of searching for the greener pastures molded his character when growing up.
The ability to carry your dream and to carry your vision all through, that is what gave me sense of purpose, regardless of what was thrown my way.
With no capital to start him off and no job to keep him going in the city, fending for himself proved almost impossible at the beginning.
From what I had done in campus, technically we didn't have a lot of jobs within that space. In campus I did actuarial science, and looking at the data, we have an uptake of 3% within the insurance field in Kenya, and compare that globally at 60% average, especially in the Western countries, in the Western world. You can see that there's a very big gap where we are.
A majority of the youth follow the same pattern on financial literacy as their parents, with no or little chance of breaking the cycle.
We learned that, or we've learned money management skills from the people who we've preceded. And if there is poor fund management skills, poor money management skills passed down, that is what we will move on with. We are taught that the most precious thing to invest in is land. However, land is a very illiquid asset. Before you're able to liquidate this asset, it takes time. So if you invest in land right now, you'd see a good example is someone taking debt to purchase land. And again, someone taking debt on top of that debt to build a house that they stay in. So in tandem, they're servicing two debts that creates zero cash flow for them.
Financial management and literacy is a skill that a majority of individuals start from their parents before they borrow from any other platform or individual in society. Men are known to oftentimes withhold their emotions when making financial decisions. This makes them logical. However, from a different angle, this behavior has often landed men in financial crisis.
You see, if you do not use debt in a productive way to create cash flows, at the end of the day, this debt will come to bite you because you need to pay what you owe. And if you do not pay what you owe and you continue to take debt to service your debt, you'll get to a point where you'll break. So this is where we see a lot of men breaking.
According to Bernard, there's an unspoken challenge for many young professionals: black tax. It is inescapable for many young adults in Africa to carry the financial burden of supporting their extended families.
At times, I've had black tax as an issue for me. However, I'm able to train people and also train myself on how to deal with black tax. So that's something that as men, we do not really see as an issue. However, financially, it takes a toll on a man.
Soaring inflation has continued to pile woe upon crisis upon uncertainty in the efforts to survive in the current economy. Shortage of money has led to a massive increase in denial, stress, anger, depression and anxiety among men, with the majority under pressure to provide.
If you're not able to provide, that's a challenge. It takes a toll on a man. Finances or money being an enabler also enables, the primary needs. For example, food, security being an issue. So it takes away what society considers as a manly task or a manly enabler. The shilling that you borrow today is different from that shilling tomorrow that you need to pay back. However, people are not cognizant of that. We are tasked to have a certain image within the society, and it forces us to do things that technically are out of our reach. We should also check up on men and ensure that this particular gender is well sensitized, is well taken care of, is well within reasonable bounds, taught how to deal with mental health, and more also empowered with financial literacy.
Following the current state of economy, Bernard highlights the need to reevaluate generational beliefs on money management, and he is grateful that his parents played a major role in the man he has turned out to be today. With the future still bleak and fragile, Bernard lives each day hoping that from where he stands financially, his knowledge will go an extra mile to save him from falling into debt crisis. It is a clarion call to the society at large to pay keen attention to the needs and wants of a man, keeping in mind what is realistic and achievable. Cecilia Lubanga, Look Up TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Cecilia Lubanga, for that feature. Remember, Bonaman comes to you every Thursday right here on Look Up TV, and it is a feature that focuses on the struggles and successes of men in our society. Right about now, we take a second break right here on Look Up News, but when we come back, I will be engaging my guest in studio, Dorothy Kemunto, who is a former presidential aspirant, and we'll be getting the groove on the Ruto leadership, just to look at the cabinet that he appointed on Tuesday, as well as the address he made in Parliament today. Don't go to her.
Vera Beauty and Fashion College is focused on being the leading technical and vocational training institute in the region. Our team possesses in-depth knowledge and extensive experience in the industry, offering thorough training in cosmetology, hairdressing, interior design, creative arts, training of trainers, nail technology, and fashion design. With branches in Nairobi, Thika, Meru, Eldoret, and now in Mombasa, our courses ensure that learners are completely equipped with knowledge, competency, and employability skills. Enroll today to be a part of a center of excellence.
Yippee! Kamata plotting at 349K. Oh yes, for only 349,000 Kenyan shillings, you become a plot owner at the Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki. The Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki is located along the Nanyuki-Rumuruti Road, only 11 minutes from the Cedar Mall and right opposite Mount Kenya Wildlife Estate. This is the best place to establish the getaway home that you have always dreamt about. For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards any of Optiven's plot of land, you get 10K cash back instantly. Jaza basi twende Nanyuki. Bigger is indeed better.
Welcome back. This is the Look Up News, and now a change of set as we get into our conversation of the day. It has been a busy week for the different arms of government, and of course the President William Ruto appointing new cabinet secretaries, as well as officiating the very first joint assembly of the 13th Parliament. And we're going to be having a conversation around the issues that have arisen since then with my guest right here in Dorothy Kemunto, who is a former presidential aspirant. I don't know if we can still say former.
We're still in the space. It's no former still, because I'm still an aspirant, 2027. Until I become the president, I think I remain an aspirant.
Stops.
It never stops.
Okay.
Yes.
And maybe just let our viewers know that we didn't plan to wear red today.
I'm excited. Great minds think alike.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, our apologies for Mary Ariviza, who's a former Nairobi MCA. She was supposed to be joining us this night, but she could not, maybe due to unavoidable circumstances. But the show must go on.
Yes.
Dorothy.
Yes.
So let's talk about, it has been a busy week for the president. And I think let's just start from today.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about the appointment of the cabinet secretaries. But looking at the address that the president made in Parliament today, and of course thanking everyone who was elected. And one of the notable things that he mentioned was Kenyans embracing women leadership.
Yes.
And the newly elected 29 women in the National Assembly.
Yes.
So this, he said, is a sign that Kenyans are ready for leadership positions. They're embracing women in different leadership positions and in their different capacities. What's your take on that?
First, I'd like to, of course, commend all the women. I think for the first time there has been a great shift. I was looking at the governor, the female governors. We moved from 0.6% to 14%. And then, of course, right now I think within the cabinet secretaries, we have about a third representation, which is really a big win. We've seen more women come into leadership spaces in the last election, the 9th August election, and very senior positions, even women pursuing independent tickets and actually winning, like the governor for, is it Meru? I think right. Meru. So it's impressive, not just that the men are telling us to embrace the fact that women came out to pursue these positions. So it's quite impressive. We need to commend the women for coming out.
Right.
Yes.
And being that they were elected positions and yes. not just nominated, so is this number likely to rise even in the coming elections?
Nelima, if you look at our country, and if you look at the statistics, we have at least above 52% being the female gender. So I think it's about time more came out. I just hope that this particular leadership will make it empowering for more women to come to the front. When I talk about empowering, I'm talking about creating a conducive environment for women who aspire to leaderships of governance and leadership to actually pursue these roles in a free and fair manner. Of course, by ensuring that we come up with laws that will protect women, of course, from political crimes, which are one of the factors that really make women not pursue this role. Secondly, we do expect that within this, the next 5 years, that we create economic empowerment, because that's also another factor that makes women not really pursue these roles. And yeah, those are some of the things I expect out of this government, yes.
And of course, we'll be talking about the place of women in the current leadership a little later on. But one of the things that the president mentioned today is the alarming status of our economy.
Yes.
And just after he was sworn in, he removed the subsidy.
Yes.
So he removed the subsidy on fuel, thereby making the prices go higher.
Yes.
And as well, he reiterated that the removal of subsidies was so that we can continue to empower production and we don't have to take all the loans just to subsidize different commodities. So what are your thoughts on this and how sustainable is it?
Honestly, I don't think it was the best decision in terms of taking away the subsidies, because yes, we're trying to solve one problem, but the impact on the Kenyans was a bit high, and we're talking about increasing the price of fuel. So that means the cost of production automatically goes up, and the cost of total ownership of goods automatically goes up. So we can't resolve one issue but create 10 different issues, because with those subsidies, it was helping Kenyans be able to afford certain commodities. But when the price went up, we all know like fuel is a major, it's used to produce energy. So there's no way we're going to do practically anything, even if we come back to logistics, because moving these goods in the supply chain from one section to another is still going to impact. I do hope that, I didn't see it substantiated, like I've not seen the facts that this will resolve this. I've just had, hearsay. All I can say right now is hearsay, that this was what was happening, but I've not seen it substantiated. So I'm not certain, but I don't believe it was the best decision. Yes.
Right. And of course, one of the things now easing into the tax, where he mentioned that the tax system must be customer friendly and that Kenyans are going to there's going to be a culture change in how Kenyans even view taxation, because a couple of Kenyans evade taxation, and we even have cases in court even from very big companies. So the culture or the attitude towards taxation.
Paying tax or taxation.
Right.
Nelima, I don't believe in solving problems from up down. I believe in solving problems from down up. If you look at the Economic Freedom Index, it informs certain things like the rule of law, government spending, and we have, I think, is it market freedom? Trade freedom and regulations. So the tax system is basically regulation. It is a good initiative to create a tax system that is friendly to the people, because, of course, the people are sustaining the economy through taxation. But there are two things I felt like he didn't mention, and the first thing is create a conducive environment for Kenyans to thrive, be able to be employed and be able to afford paying tax. That's one of the things. So I expected him to create more jobs so that there is more people to tax first. And then, of course, reduce government spending. We've seen the last 2-3 weeks people being flown to all over the country to go and make decisions. I understand that they've gone through a lot of stress in the last 2, 3, 4 years for some of them. But I don't think immediately spending to that level makes sense, considering their claims. Yes, again, that we are not in a good financial standing as a country. So I do expect before we even talk about tax breaks, government spending is the second highest expenditure in this country. So those are some of the things we need to review. First things first, before we even go and start talking about taxing or becoming a friendly taxation system or creating KRA culture change. In order for KRA to have a culture change, then it means there has to be a complete overhaul. Because these are the same characters who are still going to implement this. So personally, like I say, I feel like we're resolving from up down, and I think we need specialists involved in some of whatever is being discussed so that we really understand what is the problem. Because once we understand what the problem is, then we're able to start resolving. Because I don't think there's any Kenyan who doesn't want to pay tax, honestly. But if we see our tax going into healthcare or education or us being able to eat agriculture and such things, I don't think people would struggle. Because I've seen in the first world, states are able to...
is actually even higher than in this country.
Yeah, 50%. But then again, the healthcare is in order. The roads are in order. It's to give back, because some of the first world, the education is free up to a certain level. But quality education, that's what I mean. So I don't think Kenyans really are not... I don't think they're rejecting paying tax. It's just, where is this tax going to?
Right.
Yes.
So that has to be dealt with before the attitude changes.
Yes. It has to be two sides. Yes, we want to pay tax, but where are tax is going? You don't have potholes the size of... And yes.
And President Ruto has also been big on reviving the agricultural sector. And even the fertilizers that went down about 3,000 shillings lower from the price of the last 1 year. And of course, centering his argument on reviving production. And this, given the times where hunger and drought are ravaging at least 23 counties in the country. So how effective would the measures that have been put in place, say the reduced prices of fertilizers, how will that solve the drought and hunger crisis, or what is the solution that could be done right now?
Again, in agriculture, when you say agriculture, most people think around maize. And when you think around maize, it's to really feed you. When people talk about agriculture, I think most Kenyans, when you talk about agriculture, is tea and maize. And but if you look at fertilizer, it's just one of the inputs. Because if fertilizer is going down, then seedlings also need to go down. And then we need agronomists, and then we need soil tests, and then we need like there's a whole lot that goes into,
so there are a lot of
into
factors to
agriculture.
consider.
There needs to be water, there needs to be sunlight that is controlled. Of course, you don't want your crops to burn down. So it is a good initiative to lower the price of fertilizer. But fertilizer is secondary, because I think our farmers need to be trained and retrained on crops that are marketable. When you talk about fertilizer, we also need to discuss about value addition, because if there's overproduction of the same commodity, then again we need to find a way of increasing the shelf life of these commodities. And then we need to discuss about availing a market, because it's an end to end. So it's a good initiative. Like, I can commend him for wanting to lower that, but I don't think it's really going to solve much, because you have fertilizer, but you don't have seedlings. And this fertilizer has to be together with the input. Fertilizer has to work together with certain seedlings.
Right. But it is a step in the right direction?
Nah. I don't think so. I wouldn't look at it from that point. I think it just, is it firefighting? I still don't feel like, as long as you've not trained the farmers, even how to use that fertilizer, because there's some crops that need at least 1 meter apart. There are crops that need 2 meters apart, depending on, like, even maize. If you're growing maize for choma,
right,
it needs a smaller space. If you're growing it for corn to use and have a bigger output or a bigger maize cob, then it needs different specifications. So from training of the farmers, then they understand. Then we also need to discuss around paying farmers. That's not something we've discussed, because I know the government owes a lot of farmers, because they're paid twice, and then one is a bonus, but it's payment. So I think there's a lot within the agriculture sector that needs to be revamped. Again, like an overhaul.
Right.
Yes.
And in his speech, the president did mention that he has bad news for Kenyans. And the bad news is that our economy is, it's doing very badly. And there are critics across social media who have said, why is the president letting us know something that we have been feeling?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think, I know our economy is in a bad state, but if you look at the world at large, most economies are not in a very good state, except for the countries that are able to feed its people first. Then everything else falls into place. Kenya, we cannot even feed our own people, so how will we discuss the economy? When we say economy, people are looking at money in the bank. How do we talk about money in the bank? That's, I'm trying to have like a simpler way of how people synthesize some of this information. We know our economy is bad. If you look at 3/4 of the people in parliament were there in the previous government, so there's nothing new that they're telling us. Where were they when the economy got to that state? Right. And actually part of what just happened in the recent election with a lot of the handout business, that causes inflation in one way or another. When people inject money into an economy with no checks and balances, that contributes to the state we're in. It's just that people don't understand it from that point. Yes.
And as well, you mentioned in his address, the president also talked about now the re-elected members. As you have mentioned, they've said there is just these same faces recurring, and there are 193 in the National Assembly and a few others in the Senate as well. And President Ruto did mention that this shows that Kenyans have faith in their leaders.
Nelima, what does that mean?
The Kenyans trust their leaders. If you re-elect your member of parliament, if you re-elect members of the Senate, then it means that you have faith in them that they can go for another term.
I think when people have nothing to compare against, then we can say that. If people have not seen better, then you have nothing to compare against. First and foremost, civic education is lacking. Some Kenyans, a large number doesn't understand the work of the legislature or the Senate or governors. And as long as these people are not intentional about pursuing this kind of information, because it's easily available, then they don't understand even the duties, and they don't understand when these people do not deliver. In a world where there's so much information, but we're still very misinformed, very, very misinformed. And if you look at, I was watching today and I looked at all those people, and I said I hope that they'll push more bills that will empower Kenyans. They'll create a conducive business environment, because Kenyans are very sharp. A conducive business environment that allows Kenyans to thrive. Right. But there's a lot to be done. I don't think it's trust. I think in certain instances, people didn't have choice. And then again, the human nature of wanting to belong and be loved. So it's exciting when you belong to a certain group. So it's easier to sing a certain song. So, yeah, and if you can market yourself very well, right. Yes. And
before we talk about the cabinet that has been constituted by the president, finally on the address today, he mentioned that the current government has managed to put tribalism at bay. You know, our elections have always been centered around different ethnic groups and different regions. But the president did mention that at this moment, Kenya has finally managed, with the Kenya Kwanza government, to put tribalism at bay.
I'd say that's a subjective remark, because that cannot be substantiated. There's no means of measuring that particular statement, because my understanding is we're just rich and poor Kenyans. All these other things are just non-issues. It's a way to belong to maybe particular communities, but all this is centered around maybe access to resources, wanting to claim to belong to a certain place, because it's a human thing. It's our nature to want to belong to a certain social setup or a certain group, so that we gratify our personal needs. But that cannot be measured. I don't think that can be measured. I'm not saying, but that's his view. You know, there are things which are subjective and which are things which are objective. And it's good that he's noticed that, but I don't know how to measure that. How do you measure that?
Maybe there's not as much animosity that was there in the 2017 election that led now to the handshake.
No, if you look at, when we're talking about tribes, you must understand that the election wasn't done on tribal basis. It was done according to constituencies. And these constituencies and wards and other factors were considered, that this number of constituencies make this county, or all those. So I think people voted on the basis of, this is my ward, or this is my constituency, this is my county. I don't think there was like a tribal measure that certain people didn't vote. That's what I mean. Like, you're in Nairobi, because Nairobi, how do you put us into a tribal space? Because Nairobi it's a mixed space, because all tribes are here. Very metropolitan. Yes, very.
And now let's talk about the cabinet selection that President William Ruto appointed on Tuesday. And first of all, just to get into it already, is the number of politicians who are going to occupy these cabinet seats, as opposed to technocrats who many people believe are supposed to be in cabinet. What are your thoughts?
You must understand the role of the cabinet secretaries. If you look at the constitution, there is no clear outline or JD, but it's supposed to be more of an oversight and implementation. So they don't work alone. They work very closely with the president, and it's to take care of certain areas that contribute to our GDP. Let me just summarize that in how I understand it, or how the Constitution plainly puts it out. Are there characters who should have not made that list? Yes. But I want to believe that the president made a very informed decision. I don't want to use my own personal sentiments on how I looked at it. The most important thing is now these particular characters need to understand that they're serving the entire country. Because when we're talking about labor and social protection, you're not just going to protect a particular group of people. You have to make sure that the whole country is protected. The entire labor system, or the labor, what do we call it? The labor force is protected. People in the media, you're protected. People in factories are protected. People who are farmers are protected. So I think that's the role. So it's an oversight, but it's not like a position to bulldoze and really, because at the end of the day, all of them are governed by the Constitution, so they cannot operate outside the Constitution. So if you can uphold the rule of law, then it should be a smooth transition, because the Constitution already provides like for certain things that need to be observed. For them, it's just an oversight and to assist the president in delivering his work. Yes.
Of course, the Ministry of Devolution was significantly missing. Yes. And some of its roles which have been given to the deputy president. And we have seen Isaac Ruto, who is a former Bomet governor and the first Council of Governors chairperson, say that it was overdue, like it was supposed to be scrapped off a long time ago. Yes. But former Kakamega governor, Wycliffe Oparanya, opposing and saying that it feels like the decision was ill-advised. What is your position?
My position on the county business is the governors need to come up with a way of raising funds to contribute to the national treasury. The devolution was supposed to help with, it was supposed to ease the process. It was like an orientation, a way to make them understand, like, these are the roles you're going to play. And I personally agree it's long overdue that we did away with it, because it no longer makes sense, because these counties have been in existence for, it's almost, because it was from 2010. after the
2010 or from 2013?
To 2013, then 2013 is when it took full effect with the new president, because that's when we had the first round of governors in. I think if we're going to force the governors to empower people within the counties or industrialize their counties, then that needs to be scraped off. And I hope the president mandates them to actually start fundraising into the national treasury so that we stop this reverse, because it doesn't make sense, because these people are not empowering their local people to develop, and we're very intelligent people. So if within the county system we can create an empowering economic system and to enable young, bright minds to put up great factories or to put up great projects, then it would help to contribute. The taxation he was talking about, raise monies that can be taxed so that we contribute to the national government, so that we reduce on the borrowing that we keep talking about. Yes.
And the Kenya Kwanza government, before they were in power, the coalition spoke largely about the inclusion of women. Yes. And the president did promise, when he held the Women Charter, yes, they promised 50% of cabinet seats to the women. Though he says women have been largely included in his government, but he has appointed 7 women to be in the cabinet. This is not 2/3, and it is not the 50% that he promised in his campaign. Yes. So then are we seeing women inclusion moving forward? Find there are many other appointive positions, but for the cabinet seats as promised, will this have any effect on the women?
Nelima, my grandmother always said, promises are comfort for fools. There was no MOU signed on that. It was just a remark that was made at a very highly emotive environment. But like I said, he's just starting. He's just been the president, I think, for 2 weeks now. He's just starting. We've seen him make, at least meet their third, which is constitutionally provided for. We've seen him do something. I hope, actually, Mayor wanted 2/3 to be women and 1/3 to be men. But those are my own reasons and my own reservations. But let's give him time, because this is not the end. At the end of the year, maybe these people will not even perform. And he has the right to terminate their jobs. But I think the individuals he's picked, I want to believe that he's well informed. And of course, they meet the criteria that will serve the people, not the president. Right. That will serve. There have
also been reservations about 2 appointed cabinet secretaries, that is Aisha Jumwa and Mithika Lenturi, who are facing charges. Mithika Lenturi facing charges for attempted rape, and Aisha Jumwa for county fraud, as well as a murder case as well.
Those remain allegations until proven otherwise. And you're innocent until proven guilty. So just because they're facing those charges or those allegations doesn't mean that they're guilty of it. Because, of course, there is the burden of proof, which means someone must, the prosecutors must prove beyond reasonable doubt that these people did what we allege that they did. But I believe the institutions who are tasked with ensuring that justice is rendered to the people. So as long as we were not there, it remains hearsay. Until the right institutions, that is the judiciary, that is involved in rendering justice. So everything else is hearsay.
Okay, and so what are your thoughts on the constitution of the cabinet in terms of having more politicians than technocrats? Because critics have argued that when you include politicians, politicians are known to be people of self-interest, but when you put in a technocrat, then they're not people pleasers. They would do the work.
I think before we point fingers, we need to realize what Kenyans have put these politicians through. We must take responsibility. For the last 4 or 5 years, these people have not slept. These people have been at our doors begging for us to. So before we say they're politicians, I want to believe that we have a few leaders in there. But there's a gentleman, Vusi. He talks about the African disease of whereby people believe that a politician is automatically a leader, because we were liberated by leaders who became politicians. So I think that's a complex matter. If we knew these people did not meet the criteria from the onset, we should have not voted for them. You understand? Like, you understand? Like, we can't push them forward and then start making these claims. So if we did believe that these people did not meet certain criteria, then we should have never given them those posts. So you can't change goalposts depending on how you feel about it. Like I said, right now, my hope or my personal request to the current leadership is, let's just make sure, despite what Kenyans have put them through, that they realize that serving the people, leadership is a vocational role, so they are of service. I'd like to see a more accessible president, a more accessible vice president, not just by the people who were around him during this, right, but accessible to whole Kenyans.
Okay.
Yes.
And as we close, I'd like you to give your remarks on what the future of women leadership is in the country and what you think the trajectory of leadership is going to be for the next 5 years.
Personally, I hope that the women who are sitting in those positions right now become great mentors to women who are aspiring for the next position, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen, that women will come and take up these positions, and it's going to happen, whether we like it or not. It's going to happen. So, if you look at the current setup of this country in terms of our demographics, we have a lot of young people in. A lot of young people. We're talking about 70% and above, and these people don't look at things from a gender perspective. They look at someone's credentials and capability. So I know it's going to happen. And that's why I'm saying, like, the women who've gone forward, I do hope that they keep pushing the envelope, and whichever positions they take, they make sure that they create a conducive and empowering environment for the next group of women, because we can only push it forward. Yes.
And thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Looking forward for too many more engagements in the future, and that is Dorothy Kemunto, former presidential aspirant, though she still says she is a presidential aspirant because we have coming elections in the coming years. And that is it from us here on Look Up News, with our conversation, which was centered on the Ruto leadership, looking at the address he made today at the 13th Joint Parliament sitting, and of course, as well as the constitution of the cabinet. I am Nancy Nelima, and our sign language interpreter for tonight has been Felista Adundo. Have yourselves a pleasant evening. Good night.
After a year packed with top-level events in various clubs, we are back to where it all began. The Corporate Masters Golf Series is back at Royal Nairobi Golf Club.
Golf is really growing in Kenya also.
With a touch of luxury, presented by Fumba Town. Make it possible to own your own